All right, welcome to another episode of Reading Comics where we do just that. We're going to look at some comics here, and today we're going to look at Daredevil number 2. Yesterday we looked at number 1, and let's do a quick recap. So yesterday we met Gwyneth, who was a virgin who had somehow had a baby, and she was running from some bad guys who eventually lost her because Daredevil decided to jump in there and beat the shit out of him. And then she hides for a little while, and we learned from Daredevil that his girlfriend Karen Page wrote him a Dear John letter that was very, very long, saying that she had accepted a job in California, so she bounced yet again. And then at the very end, Daredevil meets up with Gwyneth because she comes to his law firm. She identifies the fact that he is Daredevil, which is a shock to everybody, and then hands him this baby. And at the very last splash page, we have Daredevil holding up this baby. So that's where we go into issue number 2 here. You see this cover, which is pretty cool. The Daredevil's hands holding up this little baby, and the little baby's like, what the hell? Like the baby's going to get dropped out. So let's get started and see what happens in this issue. Alright, so the story arc is called Guardian of the Devil, and you see this is part 2. Now, in case you can't recognize her, this is actually Black Widow. If you remember from the first issue, Daredevil was going to call Black Widow because they used to date. But right before she answered, he hung up the phone. Unfortunately for him, she still got the call, recognized it was him, and decided to come pay him a visit. So she does not look very happy. For those of you who don't know, Daredevil and Black Widow used to date once upon a time. So she comes up and sees that he's feeding a baby, and she's like, what the hell? And Daredevil's like, look, I didn't want to call you, but something came up, and this is super important. So he starts to tell her that he was in confession, and she's like, I don't understand why you're even going to confession, because I'm like, a godless Russian, and or at least trained by Russians, and, I should have broke you of that. And then he just kind of ignores her and says that he picks up the heartbeat of this girl and the baby, and he went to investigate, and, well, now here he is. He tells her that the baby is some kind of a savior because that's what Gwyneth had told him. And she obviously doesn't believe him because, really, why would she? So, getting past all this, she learns that his girlfriend has left him again, and she kind of thinks that that's why he called her. But really, Matt just wants her to watch the kids so that he can go out and do some stuff. And that's exactly what he does. She tells him, you know what? Superhero or not, underneath those tights, you're still just a man. And you have man needs, and you're a player and all this other stuff. And if I had any self-worth, I would probably just kick the crap out of you. But obviously she doesn't. So then Matt hands her the baby and says, I just need you to watch the baby for a little bit. I got to go check out something. I like this down here where she says, I couldn't muster the guts. Or he says, I couldn't muster up the guts to change it yet, thanks, Tasha. She says, but good God, I was an Avenger. So one day she's out there saving the world, and the next day she's watching. Now, this right here kind of threw me because Matt Murdock's face, when I first looked at it, I didn't even recognize that was him because his eyes were all rolled up, and it looks like he's on some kind of a meth binge. But no, that is definitely Matt Murdock. And what he is doing is looking at the birth records for the hospitals to see if he can find out if Gwyneth had checked in and find out what happened with this baby. Unfortunately, he doesn't. And in the middle of that, one of his secretaries says, hey, you have an appointment. It's at 11:30, which I'm assuming is 11:30 at night. It's a very odd time for an appointment. So he opens up the door, and here comes this man, Mr. Nicholas McCobbs. And basically what Nicholas starts off telling him is, you've been through a lot of stuff. You've seen a lot of very interesting things like, people who can shoot lasers out of their hands or turn their skin to stone and all these different powers. So he kind of implores him like, hey, open up your mind a little bit because what I'm going to tell you is not within the spectrum of that, but it's not so far outside of the spectrum that it's something you can't believe. He continues to tell him that, and then he starts going into the religious aspect of it, basically saying that this organization that he works for is an organization that has been watching humanity. But now that this baby is born, the end times are here, and it's the time of the apocalypse, and that Matt Murdock needs to turn the baby over to him and his organization. And you see at the bottom, he says, what the hell is going on here? Who are you? How do you people know? And of course, Mr. McCobbs is just super mellow and says, hey man, you need to release me. Then he goes into more about how Matt Murdock is being used as a pawn, and that this baby is actually essentially the Antichrist. The baby was pitched as a savior, but it's exactly the opposite of what he was told originally. So they're basically, it's almost like they're messing with him. Like he doesn't know what to believe, because on one hand he's being told it's the Antichrist, but then on the other hand it's the Savior, and this is the Antichrist. So he's just kind of all mixed up. So finally at the bottom here he gets mad. He's like, "What is this organization you guys are you're talking about here?" And then we have this cool page here, and what Mr. McCobbs tells him is like, "Hey, whenever like that extra isotope went out, or that spider bit that guy, or this thing happened to create this superhero, this supervillain," he's basically saying the organization that he works for is the organization that made all that stuff happen. You can see like here's Daredevil here, and you got Spider-Man up over here, and then you got the old school Daredevil. It looks like a WWE wrestler with that yellow and black thing that he used to wear. And then of course the Hulk with his really, really horrible haircut. It kind of looks like the guy from Sling Blade, I'm not going to lie. And then at the end of all that, he appeals to Matt and says, "Look, basically your baby is the Antichrist. Give the baby to us, let us deal with the baby, and let's be done with this nonsense." And then he walks out. So now Matt is just confused as hell, because he's like, I don't know what's going on. One person says this person says that, I don't know who to believe. At that time, Foggy walks in and says, "Hey, you know that girl that I introduced you to yesterday, which was the multi-million-dollar divorce that Matt didn't want to pick up? He wants to take her out to dinner." So Matt says, "You know what, take the platinum card, whatever, do what you got to do." He decides to go out for a walk, and at this point, he's really trying to mull over the words that Mr. McCobbs told him, because he doesn't know what to cling to. He's always been a semi-religious person, and now he's actually being like smacked in the face with that religion, with the Antichrist / Savior baby, and he doesn't really know what's going on. And of course, in walking, he gets attacked by Exhibit here, who holds a knife to his neck. But of course he makes quick work with the pop to the knee, and then the guy's holding his knee, and he just decides to bounce. But then he gets kind of mad because the guy says some shit about his mom, and he decides to go back and just kick the ever-living crap out of this guy. And I love this action sequence here with his glasses. He's like, bam, right to the face. You see Exhibit just loses a tooth right there. Now, I know it's I don't want to say it's like gratuitous, but it's unnecessary action. They had to throw something in here. So then he starts to beat the guy, and then some other people are coming up going, "Hey, man, you going to kill that guy?" And Matt's like, "Holy crap, what am I doing? Like, all this frustration and anger is making me do shit that I wouldn't normally do." Now we go back to Gwyneth, and Gwyneth is still running around. Remember, Gwyneth is the one that had the baby in the first place. So she's trying to hide from these goons right here that are looking for her. And unfortunately, she turns the corner, and this big goon here at the bottom left ends up finding her and just picks her up like a sack of potatoes and throws her in the car. So now we know that Gwyneth, the mom of the baby, has been captured. Daredevil goes out, and he's still thinking about the whole religious aspect of all of this. And he's the kind of guy who like 50% believes God exists and 50% believes that he doesn't. So he's just trying to figure this stuff out. He sees Natasha up there with the baby, and it's funny because like right here, Natasha's like, "Oh my gosh, I actually like my biological time clock is ticking." Like she wants a baby, and Matt's like, "No, don't do that, because this is a dark, shitty world, and you don't want to bring a baby in here." So Matt decides to tell her like, "Hey, just go ahead and give me back the baby, and I gotta figure all this stuff out." So once he gets the baby back, he walks to the ledge, and he just holds the baby up right here. And he's going to just body slam that baby down however many stories this is into the pavement. So he tosses the kid, obviously thinking it's the Antichrist. And of course, Natasha jumps into action and grabs the kid and then shoots her little lasso thing up to the edge of the wall, which, Matt's standing right there. So then she's just kind of hanging there, and Matt's just looking at her, which I think this is a great right here, where he's just kind of like, "I'm not going to help you because you just saved the Antichrist." That's a great caption right there. Great little picture. And then she says, "Are you insane? You're trying to kill a kid." So then he decides to help her up, which I don't know if that was the best idea. And of course, once she's up, she's pissed off and jumps on him. And she's like, "What the hell are you doing, dude?" So all of this, he basically tells her, "Well, he's the Antichrist, and I tried to kill the Antichrist." You see her response is to laugh. And she's sitting here going like, "What the hell are you talking about? That's so stupid." Now, Matt at this point actually realizes that he's being used because, the baby was given to him for a reason. and he doesn't understand why, but he just knows through all of this, good or bad, Antichrist or Savior, that he's being used for something, and he can't figure out what the hell's going on, because even with all the confusion, he recognizes that him throwing babies off of a roof is not something he would normally do. Now we go back to Foggy, and Foggy took that girl out who's going through a divorce, and her multi-million-dollar divorce. And you see right here, he's getting ready to tell her goodbye, and then she plants one on the smacker there, and they both go inside. And Foggy's thinking that he's going to get lucky, but you see this guy hiding around the corner. We go back to Matt, and Matt's always fondling this religious symbol, and he's just mulling over a lot of all the things that have happened, Karen leaving the baby and all this other stuff. And he's just trying to get a grip on something, and all of a sudden, boom, Karen shows up again. And you can see that she's crying because she's upset. I mean, if she came back, then she's obviously upset about something. And she's basically telling him that her life has been a complete mess, and it's continuing to be a mess. And then at the very end here, this is crazy. So he's like, Karen, what's going on? Because she's kind of mumbling. And she's like, Matt, like, I got to tell you something. And he's like, what is it? And she keeps apologizing. And then right here, she just says, boom, I got AIDS. And you can see right there that she's all clingy and sad. And Matt, with this little caption here at the left where it says, when it rains it pours, is absolutely correct. So obviously if they were together and she's telling him I have AIDS, and he's like, well, holy shit, I guess that means I have AIDS too. And that does it for issue number 2. So next time we'll take a look at issue number 3, and we'll continue this series. Thanks for joining me, and I'll talk to you later.